But when you disrespect Kamala Harris by saying you will call her whatever you want, I know you don't intend it to be that way. That's the history and legacy of white disregard for the humanity of black people.
So now you're calling me racist.
I didn't say. I just said you weren't a
BS.
racist.
That is complete.
No, you don't have to.
Well, if anybody thought that this presidential election was just going to be very policy driven and just talk about both candidates' vision for the future, economically, national security, oh, forget about it. You know, this is going to be about race, about gender, about ideology, about J.D. Vance being weird. I mean, that plays much more into the Democrats and the media's playbook. And we saw a perfect example of it last night on CNN. Take a look at this.
That sounds like self-hatred and justification of white supremacy. And let me just say this, because this Congresswoman is a wonderful human being. But when you disrespect Kamala Harris by saying you will call her whatever you want, I know you don't intend it to be that way. That's the history and legacy of white disregard for the humanity of black people.
So now you're calling me racist.
I didn't say. I just said you weren't a
BS.
racist.
That is complete.
You don't have to intend racism to accomplish
You are intending that
your disrespect of Kamala Harris is part and parcel of a tradition of disrespect.
Why can't you just, Congresswoman? Why can't you just?
I'm not calling you a racist. I'm telling you what the practice is.
You are. You absolutely are.
Let me get no, what's disgusting is your disrespect of her.
Professor,
this gentleman said, I didn't know her name. He's trying to do it.
Is her disrespect of women. She doesn't know what a woman is. And if 25 years ago,
white women don't have the ability to tell black women who paid the price of blood to make this country what it is, to tell them they're not real women.
25 years ago, I became the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina. I fought my way through it.
So pronounce her name right.
Let me actually
pronounce her name right.
Kamala Harris. If
Kamala.
You said we don't call you Nancy Mace. It's Kamala. You're doing this on purpose, Congresswoman.
That's disrespectful.
You can't expect people to respect
your service if you don't respect her. Walked that stage 25 years ago.
You're a white woman disrespecting
she would have taken that achievement away from women.
That's disgusting. Let me get in here because I want to play.
Wow. So pronounce her name right. Otherwise, you're racist. We're back to that again. By the way, this happened on the exact same day when Joe Biden referred to Vice President Harris as
Kamala are here today to make a major announcement in reference to lower.
I believe that was Camelot. All right, guys, help me out with this. First of all, Kosh, is this? They're obviously going back to this now. If you don't properly pronounce her name, and I've heard her pronounce her name differently depending on the audience she's in front of. Did Nancy Mace handle this well? Do you think? Was that a good defense? And are we going to have to continue to deal with this every time the news cycle gets a little boring?
I mean, look, Larry, we've talked about this. I think anything that distracts from her policy record and the radical things she believes is doing a disservice to the Republican Party and the conservative cause. Should we pronounce her name correctly? Yes, obviously. Is it racist to mispronounce somebody's name? No, obviously not. But would CNN like for that to be where the conversation is? Are you or are you not a racist, depending on how you treat Kamala Harris? Of course, that's where they would like the conversation to be. But again, the reason for that is the fact of the matter is what they don't want to talk about is the things that she believes. And what she believes are the things that a San Francisco radical who has no thoughts of her own would believe, right? She takes the left's wish list items and then gloms on a bunch of ridiculous proposals that her campaign team kind of cobbles together. They want to talk about anything but that. And so do I think Congresswoman Mace handled that perfectly? No. But do I think, that conversation was as CNN would want the entire presidential campaign to be conducted? Yeah, probably. So again, my recommendation for conservatives, pronounce her name properly and get back to the issues that show the country just how much of a radical she really is.
By the way, it's funny. I was watching some old clips because I'm a nerd because I love politics. I was watching old clips of discussions and debates back in the early 80s. They used to call Ronald Reagan all the time. Did you know that? If you go back and look at some of the clips, they would do that. And I don't think it was meant as an insult. It was like, this happens sometimes. Patrice, this guy, Eric Michael Dyson, this is kind of a party trick of his. What was that thing he said? You don't have to intend racism to achieve it. Really? Are these the new rules?
Oh, trust me. When I've testified in congressional hearings, I've had other Black men, members of Congress, do the very same thing to me, which is to talk over me, belittle me, and then tell me, oh, you're not smart enough. You don't understand. They couldn't use the race card because obviously I'm Black. But it's a trick to silence her. And I give props to Nancy Mace for not backing down. And then when she was realizing they were trying to back her into a corner and pile on her, she shifted to the rest of the better issues, talking about Kamala Harris. I'm going to butcher her name. I'm sorry. Talking about Harris's position on women in sports, talking about her own experience as a woman who broke a glass ceiling. And then, I think that's the way to handle the situation. But this is a trick that a lot of Black men use, which is to talk over you, to self-impose themselves on you. And when possible, absolutely, they try to play the race card and say, oh, you're a white person, you're a white man, or you're a white woman. How dare you try to tell our Black sisters? When, by the way, a lot of these very same Black men demean, belittle, and talk negatively about Black women who are conservatives, who are female. Star Parker, I can think of lots of examples. Our former Secretary of State and
right. I mean, you talked about this before with us, Patrice, because you actually think differently economically and in terms of the role of government in our lives. They reserve most of their insults
for vitriol for
men and women of color who don't agree with them.
Yes.
Yeah. Matt, I think it was kind of a mistake, though. If you're on Capitol Hill all the time, I mean, you start to tangle it up with Nancy Mace, you're running into a buzzsaw.
That's true. And I think this whole segment is a great example of why watching CNN is just horrible for your mental health. I mean, I think all of us are probably stupider for watching this segment. And, that's why I prefer watching this show. And Akash made an interesting point about the Harris 2024 platform. And, we'll talk more about the socialism-y aspects of it. But the other thing is, I mean, this is basically a platformless campaign. I mean, there are now more gender options that you can click on job applications for her campaign than there are policy platforms on her website. I mean, my joke about that is that the policies of the Harris campaign are just donaldjtrump.com sprinkled in with some socialism. But I mean, you look at where she's been pivoting away from the Green New Deal, which she co-sponsored, wide open border, which she was, of course, presiding over as the border czar, pretending to be tough on crime. I mean, at this rate, we are weeks away from her saying we're going to build the wall and we're going to make Mexico pay for it. But also we're going to try and implement price controls on the American economy. So she is both stealing from Trump while also really catering to the far left. And this discussion, I think, about her name, there was this brief sort of thought that it's, I don't know, racist, sexist, ableist, whatever, ageist to refer to her by her first name. But remember this was a Jen Rubin point, right? And so obviously it's wrong.
Stop calling her Kamala. She's Vice President Harris. And yet she's actually branded herself. They're celebrating and bragging about how she's branded herself as Kamala.
Exactly right. So this is kind of, I think Akash is right. When you're bogged down in discussing your opponent's name, you can probably focus on other things. And, Larry, you had said, are we going to have this on CNN every time there's a slow news week? Well, it's only a slow news week if you're not looking to find anything. And I think that's what CNN
is hardly a slow news week, but it's not a news cycle that's working in Kamala Harris's favor. And I think that's what we're really having. In fact, I'll finish it up with Akash because Nancy Mace did not go, Congresswoman Mace, was not on that show to talk about Kamala Harris's identity or her race or to properly pronounce her name. She was there talking about policy. What happens is they decided to seize on this, pounce on it if I could, and change the subject. That's the danger here, is that as soon as you start to make points about the disastrous policies that would happen in a Harris administration, they immediately say, oh, so it's because you're racist you think this way.
And they should absolutely be called on it. As Patrice noted, they do this all the time to minority conservatives, and especially women minority conservatives. I mean, again, look at the way they treated Nikki Haley, right? They were attacking her for using her middle name, Nikki, which is actually a very common Indian name. I mean, I've had my name mispronounced many times. I don't think it's because somebody's a racist. It's because they probably haven't seen my name before, right? So I think they absolutely should be called on these games that they play. I don't know if Nancy Mace did that intentionally. I don't believe that she did. But I think, as Patrice noted, she was trying to pivot that conversation back to real issues. And she did so by pointing to issues where the Democrats are very, very vulnerable and far to the left extreme of the American public. And that, of course, makes CNN and Kamala Harris's defenders very uncomfortable. And I think that is the offense that conservatives need to be playing all fall on the campaign trail.
Well, I'm just happy that if the Biden administration has been able to do anything with regard to the unemployment problem in this country, they appear to have gotten Mr. Dyson another gig. Now that we've got a person of color running for the White House again, he's going to come back out to be on TV all the time. And boy, we're all happier for it.